Don't.
In ZBrush, there's a lot of different ways to create an alpha, which you can use on your sculpting brushes. The reason that I like alpha from mesh so much is because it's fast and easy. Sometimes when you're deep into a sculpting session, you don't want to have to stop the flow of your work to go into Photoshop or to look on the web for an alpha. You just want to get something really quick so you can continue working and keep the groove going. For example, I'm a big fan of the clay tubes brush. It's a simple brush, clay brush, and it has a square alpha. But maybe for whatever reason, I feel like maybe the square is too big. I want a smaller square to create a different kind of texture. So what I can do is simply go into Tool Palette here and select a cube. Let me turn off perspective for a second. Just a very simple cube. And I'll go into Alpha and I'll choose Alpha from Mesh. So what I get is this window here with a picture of the cube. This is like a little mini version of ZBrush right here. So I could just position this. Maybe I'll use the Shift button so that it snaps to a front view, and then use the Zoom button to zoom out. So now I have a smaller square. And I'll just choose OK. And now I have the clay tubes brush with a smaller square. And I can go back into sculpting if that's the kind of look that I'm going for. So like I said, it's quick and it's easy. If you really like to brush with that alpha, you can always save the brush under a new name. And of course, the cool thing is you can use any 3D object in ZBrush to create an alpha. Let's say we wanted to create some kind of pirate logo for my iguana here. I can go into Lightbox, find the tool section, double click on the Ryan Kingsleyan skeleton, turn on the solo button, hold Control and Shift, drag a selection around just the head, press F to zoom in on the skull, go into the alpha palette, choose alpha from mesh. You can see my little skull here. Maybe choose a different view, something like that. And I'll choose OK. And now I have this alpha that I can use. Go back to my iguana here and maybe set my stroke type to drag rect. And I can drag out my skull on the iguana. If I want to edit that alpha a little bit, see if I can get more detail, I'll go into the alpha palette and go down here to modify and maybe choose alpha adjust and experiment with this curve a little bit. And then of course I could also try things like increasing the Z intensity. Or press the O button, reduce the focal shift, and you can see I get more of that skull defined. Lots of different ways to edit the alpha after you've created it. So I do want to point out that this is not the same as using a multi-alpha or a VDM brush, which is actually a 3D alpha. For example, if I go into Chisel Creature and say choose one of these alphas like the horn, this is actually pulling out a three-dimensional shape from the surface. This alpha right here is a grayscale image that's being used to modify the brush. This is actually a vector displacement map, which actually pulls it out in 3D, and you can see you have a little bit of a curve there and an overhang. I love VDM brushes as well. I'll cover those in another video. So a good example of how this can work, in the case of this iguana, I might have a very specific shape in mind for how I want to create the scales for this particular type of iguana. Let's go back in time here so I can get rid of some of this mess. I'll use the undo slider to go back to a nice pristine iguana. Go back to my Cube 3D, turn it into a Polymesh 3D so I could sculpt on it, and then spend a few seconds just shaping it with my regular sculpting tools. So I'll use the Move brush to shape this cube, subdivide it, use the H-Polish brush to create some harder edges and create this kind of rocky scale-like shape that you see on the marine iguana. And just kind of play around with it, maybe get those back edges kind of sanded down a little bit. Switch over to my clay brush, clay tubes brush, choose alpha from mesh, play with the view a little bit, maybe rotate it, just to get something that looks kind of interesting. I want to have a little space around it so that it's not clipped on the edges. I'll use the modify alpha graph here to kind of edit the levels on this and, just see what I can get out of it very quickly. And then go test it on my iguana, a little blank space here. Switch the brush over to drag rect so I can pull these out. And you get something that's kind of a nice start to the type of scales that I want. And it's very easy to create 3 or 4 different variations of this within just a few minutes. And it just, like I said, keeps the flow going on the project. I'm not leaving ZBrush for any reason to try and do something fancy. You could try it with different brush stroke types here. Yeah, that works okay, but I think drag rect works better for this particular situation. The fact that it's so fast and easy to create alphas directly in ZBrush and then modify them is one of the things that makes ZBrush brushes so incredibly versatile. Just a few small changes to a brush can dramatically alter its behavior. And of course, making your own brushes is one of the best ways to define your own style when working with ZBrush. So I love Alpha from Mesh just because it's so fast and easy. One of the many things I love about ZBrush. Thanks for watching this video. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.